Hey, welcome back. Philly, NYC, New Jersey. I'm talking to you guys out there. We're bringing some great Hawke's Bay and Martinborough wines your way in January. I'm swinging through. We're going to be doing a Giblet Gravels Masterclass at the Musket Room in New York City, which I'll be hosting with, looks like Steve Smith and Michael Henley, who is, it should be really interesting. Three guys, I'm from sort of winemaking side. We've got a master of viticulture, and he's actually a master of wine too, Steve Smith. And Michael, who's comes at it more from the marketing and business side of things, but has worked for some pretty amazing outfits over the years. So any wine writers out there, it's filling up fast. And any producers and friends around who know people in New York, tell them to reach out. But I don't know, it's going pretty quick. I think the buzz is spreading about it, so I'm excited about that. We're going to do a few dinners out in Pennsylvania, out in the sticks a bit, Quakertown and York. But they got nice country clubs and restaurants out there as well, and they want to drink the wine. I'm going to pour it for them. So, and of course, we'll probably do something at McCrossen's in Philadelphia. I'm working on that right now. And that always sells out really quick, so just hop on that when you can. Excited. Got a few new releases coming out, which I'm excited about. New Pinot coming out soon. Of course, we'll have Rosé, new vintage of Rosé coming soon. And the Testify is off in the distance. The Testify Red will probably release this fall. So things are trucking along. I also want to reach out and thank Zan Harding again for last week's podcast, or whatever, a couple weeks ago. We've gotten some really good feedback on that. I hope people keep going back and listening to that. For those of you who have listened to it, I really hope you recommend it to folks and share it. Speaking of which, we have a new Twitter account, at Vin Story Podcast. I've actually had the account for a while, but I've decided to load it onto my phone and actually be a little more active with it and post some things on there that are applicable to the podcast, but maybe not my personal Twitter account, which might be a little more conversational with buddies and things like that in the in and out of the industry. Today's podcast, we have Janine Rickards, who is a very talented young winemaker based in Martinborough, but she's worked all over the world, France, California, I think was in there somewhere, maybe Oregon. Anyway, she'll tell you about it. And I've known Janine for quite a while. We kind of met each other years ago when we were both studying. She was doing it from distance. And then I think I mentioned this in the podcast where she just always had really great jobs. She worked at Atarangi at that stage when I met her for Helen Masters, who's been on this podcast and was one of the best Pinot producers in the world, and went on to work places like Pegasus Bay, Jolicoeur, and now she's settled in as head winemaker at Erlar, which is a biodynamic facility in Gladstone, actually, where I used to make my Pinot. So sort of all full circle, and it's the small industry once you get into it, particularly here in New Zealand. So Janine's a mate. She's really cool. She talks to us a bit about her hunting and foraging. She's definitely a meat eater, which I am as well. And there's something to be said about, if you're going to eat meat, go get it yourself, or get it from somebody who farmed it or who hunted it. So she's legit, man. She's authentic, and that's, I think, what we're going for on this podcast is authenticity and people who really know their stuff. All that. She's been a part of making some of New Zealand's greatest Pinots, and I'm really excited to see what she's going to do with the Erlar wines, which have always been really good, and I'm looking to see what her little fingerprint is going to be with those wines in that great vineyard they have there in Gladstone, just north of Martinborough. What else is happening? I got a nice cup of warm tea on a first rainy day here for a while. We're looking like it's going to be a drought here in Hawke's Bay. That's good tea. We're so lucky here in Hawke's Bay. We get to, not that it's cheap, but we got Manuka honey anywhere you want, and you start feeling a little something in your throat, have a little Manuka. It's great. But anyway, very, very great to have some rain today, especially with, water issues happening. Nice for the vineyard guys to not have to irrigate, and I hope they're all working towards dry farming, because as we mentioned in that Zan Harding podcast, it's coming, guys. You're going to be paying for water. What else? Going to Italy. We're going to travel through there coming up soon. So anybody got any suggestions? Friends in Piedmont, Piemonte. We're going to visit some producers there. Any luck? And maybe I'll sit down and interview somebody. I might bring my gear along with me, which is pretty compact anyway. So I don't think I'll have time to do anything like this in America when I'm there, but it should be pretty chill in Italy. Looking forward to going to see some family there. Anyway, let's talk to Janine. She's got some cool stories and good things to tell us, and right at an interesting part of her career. And I think we'll be speaking to her again down the road. Here she is, Janine Rickards. And
it's gone?
No, they got evacuated, and because the hills were on fire behind it, and they're okay. But a buddy of mine's a chef. He was doing meals, lunch and dinner and breakfast every day for the firefighters and everything out there, because he runs he has a commercial kitchen space there with a couple other chefs, so they were just round the clock cooking, and just a little bit of help with a little bit of vineyard in Italy, and that's about it. But just harvest, and then I did some work for a guy in Oregon as well. Okay. Literally like a weekend of helping him rack, and it was like right after this conference, and we met, and he was like, I said, I'd love to. I got weekend free. Do you want to hang out? And I helped him with some Pinot and Cabernet, actually.
Cool.
But we are recording now.
All right.
So we're live. We're live. I'm just going to put these headphones in for a second and make sure Janine is nice and clear.
It sounds okay. Apart from my croaky cold.
Yeah, well,
I'm still getting over. 9 days of antibiotics, and I'm still...
Sounds sultry, you know?
Oh, good.
Careful the kind of men that listen to this podcast, you know? But yes, so interesting times for you. New job?
Very exciting, actually, because I sort of had my sights set on that Erla position when it came up last year, and that it's worked out that I am going to get up there and work with Angus and organics and a bit of, obviously, biodynamics as well.
Yeah.
Which is really cool, and good to be back in the region of the Wairarapa. Feels like home. I felt like at the Pinot conference in Wellington.
You were cheating on us or something?
I just felt like it was, such a huge symbolism about the sense of place, and I'd been everywhere in the last 2 years. It felt like I was all over the show. Coming back here really felt like coming home, so it's good. And being at Ulica for this harvest, being a challenging season, was it was a great experience. They're a lovely couple. I think Te Muna Pinot is something very special, quite different to Martinborough.
Yeah, what would you put the three? Obviously we're talking more larger site area in the Masterton, Gladstone, and then Te Muna, and then the main sort of terraces, I guess is what you call the main Martinborough area. As far as you're concerned, I kind of have my own thoughts, but I'm curious.
Well, I've mostly worked with Martinborough terrace fruit, so I made a little bit for myself this year, and I'm pretty excited about those 4 barrels. Like for me, they're all quite distinctively different, and I guess my experience at this stage is limited to Gladstone. Like not that much experience up there, so I guess once I've spent a bit of time up there, I'll have a better feel for all three sub-regions. But
even out of the wines you've tasted, I suppose one of the things I'm wondering, I kind of know that Timuna is a little bit later and a little bit, it's maybe a little less of those earth tones than you get on the terraces. But I think one of my big questions is of the Gladstone fruit, just taking them, is that something that is more suitable to like whole bunch, or is it, is it darker fruit? Is it heavier? Is it light? Is it thinner and not quite as much character, you think? Or
from what I've tasted, I would say that Gladstone has a bit more sort of elegance to it. Timuna, in my experience, is darker, spicier, really dark fruits, and it's a week, 10 days later than here, about probably similar on par with Gladstone. But they've got quite a special different microclimate up there, I think. And then there's that many wineries, within that small region out there that are diverse within themselves. So it's a bit hard to generalise.
Yeah. I don't want to. I don't want to do is generalise, but I will say, because I made Pinot there for 3 years, and a good part of probably 4 different vintages I would have tasted in barrel at Urlar, that you're in for a treat. Yeah. I tasted some awesome stuff there, and when I was there in barrel, and that was being worked on at the time, and they were, I think, experimenting. They had like one French intern one year that really did like 100% whole bunch, and they were kind of playing around with different stuff. But then obviously the biodynamic site and all that is pretty exciting to be working with.
Very exciting. And I think Carol, since she's been there after Guy's, sort of brought a brightness to the wines from what I gather. So it'll be interesting to try and find a medium between those maybe. Yeah.
And what's her background? I don't know anything about. She's
Carol, she was at winemaker for Vinpro for a very long time in Central. And then she was at Gießen for a while. And now she's up here. Yeah.
And she's running the vineyard, or she's in the wine?
She's been in the winemaker, but she's departing, and so
opened up the way for Janine to step in. And I think one of the more curious, this is purely selfish reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast, was you're a great winemaker, but you, because you were local, a Kiwi, and I was this guy who came from far away. I felt like I was like so far behind when I got here. I think like I definitely had some probably more life experience than people that were younger than me, or not that much younger than me, but you are younger than me. But I felt like I got here, and so many of the Kiwi winemakers, even ones that were 10 years younger than me, were just way ahead as far as like the jobs, knowing where the cool places were to work, what are the good vineyards, what are the good wines. And I distinctly remember meeting you at Atarangi and being like, how the hell is this girl got this awesome job at like one of the best wineries in the world, and you were kicking ass at it. Like there was absolutely nothing about you or talking to Helen at the time that like you didn't absolutely deserve that job, and you weren't kicking ass at doing that job. And it seems like since then you've continued on to have work at really good places and work for interesting people, and including up until today where you're working a new place. So I guess I want to figure out, how the hell did you get into it,
Very lucky, right place and right time. I actually did my first 2 harvests in Hawke's Bay at Cellini and worked with Eleanor Dodd, who works in the office at Atarangi. And she asked me to do Salador for the summer. And I was like, sure, as long as I can do harvest.
Good move.
And then it just so happened that Helen was pregnant with her second child and needed some help in the winery. And I stayed there for 7 harvests, 6.5 years, and learnt so much. Yeah. Great family business. Loved it. Some special people, special vineyards.
Yeah, that's one of the spots in all of New Zealand that I try to get people to say, you gotta stop in there. You'll just feel it when you walk in, and obviously the wines deliver and everything. But yeah, and then where did you go? You went overseas after that?
I did. I went to Burgundy for 2012 for the growing season and vintage.
How was that vintage there?
It was small and cooler, like they've had a runoff, but I think the 12s are looking really good actually, and it was a fantastic experience to get out in the vineyards and really get an appreciation for Burgundy, but also Beaujolais. So I worked for Thibault Léger-Belair, and he has a domain in Moulin-Avant. So that was pretty rad, going down there every week and doing harvest down there and then back up in Burgundy. And
so it's basically the same time.
Yeah, we did a full week down there, and then we came back and started and did the week up in Neuilly-Saint-Georges. He's got some great sites all along the côte, basically from Corton through to Gevrey. And then I came home, and right place, right time, Helen mentioned that Matt Donaldson at Pegasus Bay might need someone, so I approached him and another family of 12 vineyard. I worked there for 3 years as the red wine maker alongside Matt, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'd be fun, I would think.
Oh, those Donaldson brothers are fantastic. They really...
I sat across from them at one of the lunches at Pinot 17, and within like seconds I was starting to get the dynamic, because the one brother had just returned from Europe or something. Yeah. And the three of them together, and I couldn't tell who was older or young. It was like they just had their own thing going on. It reminded me a lot of me, and I have one brother and we're really tight. Yeah. And sometimes people are like, wait, you're the younger one? And what, I was kind of felt like I was in the middle of that, and I just talked music with Matt there was another woman next to us, a writer or something, and we just talked music for like 40 minutes. We didn't talk anything about wine. It's just like, give me some of that, somebody walking by with a bottle. But he seemed to know a lot about music, and I think we were talking about iTunes versus Spotify and all that kind of stuff. But he had some strong opinions, which was cool.
I love the music in that winery. It's like psych trance or hip hop or something. A lot of fun and energy. For long days at vintage there. But very generous family and incredible wines, and it's great.
And they make obviously Pinot, Riesling is what I've always had a lot of the Riesling, Chardonnay. They do Merlot Cabernet, straight Malbec we did one year. He's got a bit of freedom, so we if something stood out, we'd make it as a solo wine. So the Muscat normally got there's a tiny amount of it, so it might go into the Sauvignon Semillon or something, but we made a dry Muscat. Of course, Sauvignon Blanc, yes. Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you think, because I'm heading down there, tomorrow night, but I'll be out Friday morning in the sort of vineyard areas of, what they're calling North Canterbury now. A bit of a rebranding.
Yeah, that's great.
But it seems like, there's obviously millions of people listen to this podcast. If I let the cat out of the bag, that there's sort of undervalued fruit in that area. There's a couple, up and coming producers, and a few obviously established ones, and some, you have Pyramid Valley and Pegasus Bay. Probably, I would assume they're the two sort of hottest ones in the area. Or
Black
Estate's doing really well. Yeah,
amazing.
Great wines.
Tongue and Groove. Like, there's a lot of energy and fabulous people down there. It's a really strong community, and I love that about North Canterbury. They're a team. We're working together for that region, and all sort of, a big organic movement for a lot of them into their foraging, and just seem to be well connected as a family, which I think is important.
Suits you in your foraging?
I loved it down there, yeah.
So all right, we'll go back to wine in a little bit, but how did you get so much? Is it your Instagram that says you're a huntress or what is it?
Yeah, that's the potential name for my small amount of wine I've made this year. So I've done a lot of hunting, especially this year being back here. I guess the hills and the Wairarapa aren't as steep as North Canterbury, so I get out and about a bit more than I did down there. I've been.
What do you mostly hunt?
Deer, I guess, or deer stalking. Pig hunting if we can, not this winter because they've 1080'd the hills, so we won't go out there with the dogs. But deer and pigs, and I've shot a chamois, and I'd love to get down and get some tar. I think it's a beautiful meat to eat.
Tar. What was tar?
Tar. It's like from the Nepal and the Himalayas.
Oh, it's like a yak kind of thing. Yeah.
Beautiful meat.
Yeah.
But that's some steep country that they
I
live
was
in.
gonna say,
So I'm like, I'll work towards that, get my fitness up. Maybe we'll do a trip. Stick
Hang
with the
off a
easy
rock
stuff.
with a gun.
Yeah. But I think I just got into it through, I grew up on a sheep and beef farm, and I've always been a meat eater and liked quality meat, and I got frustrated at the quality I could buy. So I wanted to get into hunting to provide myself, be as self-sustainable as possible.
It's awesome.
Self-sufficient, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always looking for swaps and stuff. So
I've had a lot of
inquiries
keen
about
on
that. Yeah, I bet. I've done it a little bit in Hawke's Bay. My mate Corey, he was just over this Sunday with crayfish because he does pots, but then he goes into the bush quite a bit, and he came back with some venison. But then he also comes with whitebait, and he does it all. And fish, just regular fish,
Nice.
He has them all filleted and vacuum sealed, and he knows. And then I just give him wine, so it's good. And I like this kind of bartering. If
Totally,
I'll start
it's the way
hitting
to
me up
go.
when I'm coming down from Hawke's Bay. Maybe we can provide some citrus. I don't know. What can we give you from Hawke's Bay?
There's lots up in Hawke's Bay.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of. That's right. You spent those 2 years at Cellini. You would.
Yeah.
You could visit that farmer's market and.
Fabulous farmers market.
Yeah. And, it's funny. I'll probably still only get there once a month or something. When you live there, you take it for granted. But then it's what's good to have tourists through and visitors. You're like, let's go
to the market. I'd love to get one going here in Martinborough more regularly. They have one on a I think it's a Sunday just through the summer once a month, which for me isn't enough. So I've signed up to an organic vegetable supplier. And so I'm getting my veggie boxes and pretty much my own meat. And Mick, my partner, does white baiting, and we've been for a few dives on the weekend, and
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a good lifestyle.
What backing up, Mike? One of my questions about deer/venison is a lot of the venison. There's a lot of venison export from New Zealand. We apparently do really nice venison.
Yeah, apparently.
And when they call it wild venison. Is that actually, are those wild venison farms, or are they actual bush venison? And
I believe it is wild. There's a couple of game producers, and one down in Invercargill, who I spoke to him a few years ago. And he goes up in the chopper in the fieldland and shoots them and then processes them and exports that through his business. But then the farm venison, I thought in the States it was called Savannah. It's quite.
But I've just seen some smaller farmed venison even in Hawke's Bay. Every so often there's one or two spots that they kind of rotate in and out of. And so I just wasn't sure if you knew.
No.
If there's obviously one would be gamier because it's foraging more and,
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the time of year and the feed that they're eating. So at the moment, the spring grass, they're all coming down low and eating the fresh growth, and they're putting on condition after winter and looking really good. So if you go to the right spots, then you get a nice tasty beast.
Butchering, you do?
Yes, do that all ourselves and try and utilise as much as possible. So bring the liver and the heart out and eat that, and make pate, and just have the heart with some onions and sage.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like all the stuff that we love to eat is actually there for us to have and just learn how to do it. But there's so many people that are like, I don't want to make pate. I just
eat it.
Just want to eat it.
It's a lot of work, you got to hang it up, you got to skin it, you got to break it down, you got to age it, you got to tidy it up, you got to vac pack it. It's very time consuming.
Yeah, sure.
But it's satisfying.
Absolutely. I grew up across the street from an old Italian guy who was the town. He was a butcher by trade, but he would do all the hunting, butchering right there for all my friends' dads and stuff who brought in deer from the woods and everything. And I could, I've been back there in his shop, and he had a kind of outfit and refrigerated area behind his house, and it was an ongoing, constant process. And then there was sausages and stuff that he would do at times, and So and that's why I asked is like how quick you feel like you can get to being efficient in doing that, because it's got to be challenging, right?
Yeah, it's physical too, but I won't be opening a butcher shop anytime soon.
No,
I'm not that quick, but
you get a real appreciation.
It's like a hobby, so the more you do it, the faster and easier it is.
Get the good knives.
Yeah, sharp knife and.
Yeah, I just think there's too many people who are too far from their food and don't really. I think if anything, you'd gain more of an appreciation for conservation, more of an appreciation for what good meat is, and sort of being not into factory farming kind of stuff. And
yeah, absolutely. There is a huge disconnect for a lot, but I think the momentum's changing quite fast.
It is. It really is. There's a lot. It's certainly back home in the States, and more and more people in New Zealand. But I think New Zealand comes from they're a lot tighter to their history. It might be just a generation away from that, and they're getting back to it really quick. Like probably our generation and younger. I mean, there's certainly the city kids and stuff that don't want to be bothered or whatever. But I would say most people in New Zealand are either a generation or a cousin or family away from farmers and somebody who was somewhat closely involved in production of dairy or some type of farm that had either something right next to it or whatever. So it's pretty easy to get back into it. But yeah, it always felt like in the States, with my parents' generation, it kind of got lost in there in the 50s, 60s, 70s when they started doing, like I said, factory farms and more, food became more widely available, and it was a little bit taken for granted, where my grandparents was still like, they had one butcher, they had, we knew hunters, they would go, they made their pasta, they were, but by the time I came along, they had almost stopped doing a lot of that stuff too. And they certainly had their purveyors that they would go to, and my grandmother's brother was a farmer not far from us, so it wasn't like that far away, but like as suburbia kind of grew, and everybody started going back to the cities too in the 80s and 90s. It gets
too busy, and then you take the easier
absolutely. But now, and it's mostly been like, it's sort of the same generation as the hipsters, which, is funny. It's a funny term, but and people maybe a little bit older than me and then certainly younger have gotten more into like preserves. And, my grandparents had a farm, so I'm going to reopen that up, and I knew all these chefs, so I'm going to purvey to them. And I know, I could probably name 12 people that weren't doing that when I first met them that are now in that business in one way or another, or they work with a dairy farm and make cheese that is now a premium cheese, all these different type of things that weren't going on. So, and I almost think like we got so busy with work that they took food away from us, they took like really good food and quality food, and now we're kind of taking it back, thankfully. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, I think the health of people was deteriorating pretty quickly. I did a permaculture course up at Kohanga in Wairoa last year, and it just really brought home to me the importance of nutrition and food and health, well-being, all that.
Yeah, there's nothing in some of the food.
Growing your own food. The supermarket vegetables have got nothing in there that's actually good for you, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think once because we do a lot of gardening around the house and everything, and veggie gardens, herbs, flowers, whatever. Yeah. Once you the more and more you get into it, the more and more you can quickly spot, like, wait, what? I don't want that, like there's nothing in that, or there's no flavor in that either.
Exactly.
That's a big one. It's like, just out of pure gluttony, how about the flavor?
Totally.
So, yeah, I encourage anybody, even if you live in the city, have a little garden.
It's so simple to have a few greens in there that you can whip up a satisfying meal from, spinach, herbs. Herbs just like are the wow factor in a dish.
Yep.
Lift it to a next level.
Yeah, especially because they got a lot more heat than we have here in most parts of the world. And we can pull it off here, though. There's a lot of unfrosted areas on these hills and stuff in New Zealand. But let me get back to North Canterbury. What I think for most people in the world looked at a map, already New Zealand's pretty far south.
Yeah.
You can almost get your head around Otago, or at least I can now. After the first time in 2010, I drove from Christchurch into Queenstown, and I realized it turned from this green pastures and rolling hills to desert, alpine desert, you know. Going back in the other direction, North Canterbury, I mean, I suppose it's near Blenheim, but a lot of sunlight hours there and everything. I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean...
Hillsides, like, I'm going Friday, so I'll see more, you know.
I think there's a lot of diversity there. There's a lot of limestone slopes, which are good for the, you know, draining of the frost. It's quite extreme in some ways, but a different extreme to Central. Like when I arrived there, they'd had a couple of years of drought, you know, and then when I left, you know, they'd had a large amount of rainfall. Like, I think it's hard work, but very satisfying for the end products. There's some fantastic producers there, a biodynamic wheat grower, and just people who are really passionate about quality produce, and they battle with the elements. I mean, we have a similar climate in some ways in the Wairarapa. We get the same southerlies come through, you know, generally, historically, you look at frosted seasons, they're mostly on par with North Canterbury because of the way the mountains shape and how the air comes in. And some sites are very similar as well because of the elevated river terrace. It's not just all the limestone that they've got. So, yeah, I mean, North Canterbury is just a magic place. Huge area for a lot of potential and for growth and expansion. And like I said, for me, the biggest thing about them was the people, put people down there in the community.
Yeah, that's what I hear from a lot of people. So, and my buddy who just moved down there, he seems real happy with the area. So, and you were there till just a year or two ago, or a year ago?
Yeah, I left, when did I leave? Just beginning of last year. I had a local wild food challenge that I had organised for the second year in a row, and I then jumped on the ferry and came up home to my parents. They live up near Auckland, or just near the Coromandel, and flew out to Australia last year for 9 months. Worked in South Australia for a sparkling producer, a really good friend of mine, Kate Laurie, Deviation Road, and learnt quite a bit about sparkling wine and champagne.
Wow.
So harvest through to tirage, and then sort of had to make the decision, did I want to live in Australia or come home? I wanted to come home.
Good decision.
So
I think sparkling production is, like, you could take me on wine tours of famous chateaus or, you know, different productions all over the world, and I'm still going to be like, oh, it's a nice tank, or, oh, okay, there's amphora, that's cool, but when I see a true method production, it blows my mind.
It's such hard work.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
We went to this one place in Berlucchi in Lombardia in Italy, and it's like their famous method area, and it was 5 years before they released their cheapest method. You know, and you're just like, just from a business standpoint of view, you're like, how the hell?
Exactly.
You have to have some serious balls to start doing method, you know. You're just like, I'm probably going to lose money for 50 years, you know. Yeah. And by the way, do I have some caves that, you know, I can dig out of the mountain or whatever? So, but that was, and that was like Chardonnay
Pinot, and then they also made still Chardonnay and Pinot and a Syrah, but all in very tiny volumes. So I got to play with the Pinot, and she released 2 from that last vintage, 16. And I was over there a month ago tasting some of the wines with her, judging at the Royal Adelaide show.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, it was a fun experience. Good to catch up with everyone, and the Blanc de Noir, which is just being released from 2016.
I have to admit, I
want to get some.
Have no idea how everybody gets involved in shows.
Yeah,
because like all my friends do it, and more and more of my friends are doing it, and I'm like, I don't even know how do you.
How do you fit the time in for it too?
I guess it's that too, but I've never like looked into it. But I suppose what do you start stewarding and then kind of
Yeah.
goes from there.
Yeah.
I think I polished enough glasses in my former life, growing up in a restaurant, that I just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, I worked in hospital before winemaking, and I've done a fair bit of polishing. But Nick Ryan got me into Adelaide last year, and then I did a second year this year, and I just did my first associate judging at Air New Zealand last week. So
that looked fun, just from a few pictures
it was
on the.
challenging for me, recovering from a winter illness, but I got through it and met some fantastic people, and it was good. New Zealand's come out of 2017 with some strong wines,
So you were tasting enough 17 whites,
Sauvignon
obviously,
and Gris,
and Pinot Gris,
yeah, Riesling, I think.
Riesling, yeah.
So that was fun, and then
it's a tricky thing, the shows, because on the one hand you're like, what is it? It can really matter for certain things, and obviously if there's, I think Air New Zealand probably is the top of that, because they will actually buy some of the wine, and it gets published all over the world, and it's going to be on their flights, and blah blah blah. And I see nothing wrong with the fun of going into a little competition with your friends or peers or whatever, and but then sometimes it's like there's so many of them. Somebody coming up to say hi, it's not that if they come up I can just pause, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's funny how you don't know which one to enter. They all seem like, I never heard of the Royal Adelaide show. I'm sure it's lovely.
It's huge too. There were 2,700 wines. 4 days of solid judging, so it was full on. Yeah. Hi, Carol. I haven't been jibber jabbering too much.
And we're back live. Just take a little break to speak to the owner.
The owner of
this lovely estate where I do all my podcasts on vineyard homes.
On beautiful days.
But then, we were just talking about Peter Proctor and biodynamics, and that book, Grass to the Nettle, is a really good sort of baseline.
Totally.
You understand it, cool little drawings in it, and it makes it, I think, a little less scary and really practical straight away, which I think is really probably what it comes down to with biodynamics. And what
I think so. For me, I'm more practical than studious, and working at a couple of biodynamic places now, getting your hands into it and getting a feel for the place is more important than.
It's just really, it really is like this. I think if the guy was a visionary or clairvoyant or whatever they want to say, what he was really smart about was like, and my partner studied the education side of it as well. That he does a lot for, obviously Waldorf schools and stuff are based off of this. That there's some very, very practical things about it. Like the biggest one on the education side was like, I think they don't teach the ABCs and reading or writing or anything until they're like 6 or 7. They don't bother doing it when they're 4 or 5, 6, because all that 2 years they learn in 2 weeks.
Right.
And it's like, their brain, by the time they hit, I think everything he does is in 7s. And by the time they hit 7 years old, like 98% of kids' brains are like at a spot where they can learn all that right away. And then you could have spent, instead of trying to beat the ABCs into them, you could have them spent learning more motor skills and social skills, and which is probably what they need more of anyway.
Absolutely.
And so on the vineyard side, and I've never like done a season as a biodynamic grower or anything. I've just done garden and everything. But even just from the gardening and buying the preparations, but you just feel like, I'm in here, I'm doing it. I'm stirring.
It feels good.
It feels good. You're connected. You're like, you're paying attention. And I've had some conventional growers who were transitioning, like guys who work for Villa Maria that, that were, Jonathan Hamlet's got them doing the stuff and the stirring and all that. And they're like, after the first year, like we realize we're walking a little more in this block and we understand it and we get a feel for that site a little more. And it's the cumulative everything,
That's right. It's the same as growing your food or hunting for your meat. It's having a connection to what you're doing and, the life you're living, really, isn't it?
What about on the winemaking side, though? That's obviously James is up in Gisborne has, been doing it for a long time, and I've seen all his little projects and things he has going in the. I think, is it possibly a little bit more subtle in the winery outside of the copper? You can. What is it? You can't really. You're not going to add copper, but you can use a copper pipe, that kind of stuff. But outside of that, I don't really know the winemaking side of it that much.
Well, I guess like every season, there's always a new challenge, no matter how you're farming, and you're sort of making your wine depending on the season a lot. And I think it always comes back to the wine is grown in the vineyard, so no matter how you play or what projects you've got going, the fruit is going to shine from your effort before it gets to the winery. But as for what you do in there,
I mean, obviously managing fermentation and
it's the same as any winemaking, isn't it?
But I've never worked in a biodynamic winery. I've seen the.
I guess you have to be quite meticulous. Using less sulphur, and obviously you need to keep things well topped and tidy and clean and.
Yeah, same. You don't have as much of the arsenal of weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
That we have in modern winemaking these days. Yes, so we talked about Schubert, and let's talk a little bit more about them. You did the one vintage there, but they're a family-owned winery, and didn't they have? I'm Schubert. I'm sorry,
Milton.
No, about Ulicker.
Ulicker, yes.
We're right across the street from Schubert, so that's what confused me. Ulicker Family Vineyard. I had first heard of them, I think, when maybe like 2008 or 9. Then they won some big. They've
won a lot of trophies with their Pinots. I think their Pinots are really strong, and their previous winemaker, Outi Jakoveta from Finland, has constantly made great Pinot off that site. But yeah, they're a small estate. They're going through a bit of replanting. It's on the market, and I think a fantastic site, locked right in between Escarpment's vineyard out there and Craggy Range just down the road. They will produce great fruit, and I think there's huge potential for planting some more space out there, and maybe turning into organics. I think would be an easy spot to make that transition. Mm-hmm. Being elevated river terrace, and
on the actual escarpment.
Exactly.
You're kind of right there.
I was filling the tanker this morning, and sun was coming up over the hills, over the Coupe Hills, and it's just magic.
It's pretty amazing out there. I mean, every time, because I drive so much back and forth from Hawke's Bay to Martinborough, and it's one of the things I try to convey when I'm like trying to sell this, my Pinot in the States, is like, it is this perfect little Pinot pocket. You hit the hills kind of right near Woodville, and it always seems to get cloudier, rainier around there.
It's always raining in Woodville.
Yeah, it's so funny. And then like you kind of turn off, and then by the time you're getting into Martinborough, you do these like 2 or 3 drops down. And you're like, oh, and then you look around, and there's hills on all these other sides with a little southerly opening, and it's just this coolness that comes through with the sunlight, and it doesn't get as much rain as maybe the hills all around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then Tamuna is like this other little magic offshoot to the side. So, it's pretty. Well, we're pretty blessed in New Zealand with visuals, that's for sure, and that's certainly not at the bottom of any list out in Tamuna. Because Martinborough, you got this cute town and everything, but it's kind of covered. You wouldn't really know it. Sitting here, it's a pretty little picturesque town, but when you go out to Tamuna, it's that more raw New Zealand.
Absolutely, and that's what I love about this region, and the coastline and the hills and the diversity of bush, and it's kind of spot on for me anyway.
I think we're going to try to go to a beach that's some famous beach, maybe between Hawke's Bay and Martinborough.
Castle Point?
Yes. And everybody's like, you haven't been there? You got to go. It's amazing.
I don't think I've ever been to Castle Point.
Okay.
I tend to go to Tora or Naui. But I've been to Riversdale. But yeah, it's meant to be quite magic out there.
Yeah, these are the little beaches that nobody gets out to. And we have a couple on Hawke's Bay. I mean,
and you go out there and you realise just how much land there is between here and the coast as you're going up to Hawke's Bay. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, there are these parts, and that is one of them. Like, it's a bit untouched. You know, there's obviously some up near Gisborne as well.
Yeah.
Where there's just these chunks that nobody's in. Nothing's there, just bush. And then you get out and there's this amazing beach. I mean, Ocean Beach in Hawke's Bay is funny because you think of that's like a busy beach, but on any given day, it's like this massive crescent moon beach.
It's so long, isn't it?
And it's so long, and there might be 40 or 50 people out there.
Yeah,
whereas you're at a beach like, yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so busy today.
I tell you what, the Labour weekend down here at the coast was busy. So I lived down towards Pirinoa one year, and the traffic going out there, it was like,
well, it's one road
it's
anyway.
a circus at the lighthouse. Everyone parked to walk up to the lighthouse and back out. Wow. Crazy.
Not used to that in New Zealand.
No.
These packed beaches.
Good.
So, yes, now we're on to Urlar and exciting times ahead.
Very, very excited.
What's the plan? Go in, change the whole regime,
No.
Put your fingerprint on every wine?
No, not at all.
You just
go in there and meet the team, and hopefully we'll have a fantastic growing season. And
hopefully we are going to have
we are. I mean, it's been a great spring, hasn't it? Quite mild out there, quite warm today. Lots of growth and things looking healthy.
All their vineyards pretty much at the site there?
They are, yeah. Yep. It's all planted right there below the winery, next to the winery.
Yeah, and they've got their
little
lake there, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's good to have that mix in New Zealand where you have this raw space, but then a nice pretty modern winery, It's good.
Yeah, I think
good
it's got a few toys.
It's got a few toys. It's got, I can say for a fact, awesome refrigeration.
Nice.
Which you'll appreciate. I've seen the chilling on the tanks when they need to be turned on. Get that nice ice cake around it, to stabilize your whites or whatever you need to do. It's pretty exciting.
Oh, it's going to be magic.
Luxury.
I can't wait to work with Carol for the handover and see what she's done with this year's fruit, and just get my hands into it.
And they are Sauvignon Blanc,
Pinot Gris, Riesling.
They do. That's right. They do Riesling.
A little bit of Riesling. There's 2 hectares, I think.
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting.
Maybe 1 hectare. Yeah.
I'll have to start a new swap program with you for those wines again. I think I'm just out of all the Urlar wines I've had in the past. Well, that's awesome, man. I think we could probably end it there, before we get interrupted again.
The dog's been very good.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
And, we'll see you again soon, and best of luck.
Awesome. Cheers, Dan.
Oh, thank you, Janine. You're a darling for doing that. We got interrupted at one point, which I think it's one of the first times that's ever happened. But we had to pause and restart again. I don't know if we lost our momentum, but anyway, she's a mate, so it was all pretty natural. But yeah, we sort of got interrupted by the owner of the house where we were doing the podcast down in Martinborough, and doggy and stuff like that. So anyway, at Vin Story Podcast on Twitter. Please follow. I think I've got 4 followers right now because I just started. So I'm gonna, obviously try to expand that. So if any of you guys are out there in the Twitterverse, please follow so you know exactly. You can share episodes. We're really trying to spread the word about this, certainly within New Zealand and America, and we're gonna, like I said, try to do some European podcasts coming up from Italy. Again, special thanks to Janine. Thanks for doing that. And we'll catch you guys soon. Merry Christmas.